Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sheila Hesh and I'm the Executive Director of Sales at the MGM National Harbor, and I'm Chair of the HSMAI DC Chapter Advisory Board. And today we're continuing the mission of HSMAI, which is to fuel sales, inspire marketing, and optimize revenue. And since we're not able to meet in person, we're continuing our educational efforts virtually. This is the 6th webinar in our series, and we're so thankful that you've joined us. And now that the DMV is finally entering into the reopening process, today's topic is quite timely and our panel is perfectly selected. Our topic today is managing change for your staff and guests, and we're so pleased to welcome two very well-respected general managers, as well as an HR executive and a change management expert. And for those listening in, if you have any questions for the panel, please enter them into the question box and we will be sure they get addressed. Also, please note that you will receive a link to today's recording. I'm now going to turn the reins over to my fellow HSMAI DC chapter board member, Ms. Laja Ashar, who will lead the discussion. Laja is the area manager for the Mid-Atlantic region at Booking.com. She leads multiple offices and teams which provide consulting, revenue management, and account management support to over 12,000 lodging accommodations from Delaware down to the Carolinas. Laja, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm really excited to welcome our panelists and lead today's conversation. Like Sheila mentioned, very timely. And also joining me to lead the conversation is Jennifer Hill, VP of Client Solutions at Colibri Labs, and also my fellow HSMAI DC advisory board member. So welcome, Jennifer.
You're on mute.
Jennifer, we can't hear you. I don't know if...
Thank you. I was just going to say a couple of housekeeping notes. Super excited to be here, be part of this conversation. We want all of you to be part of the conversation as well. So we are going to invite you to ask as many questions as you have in the questions or chat feature of GoToWebinar. We'll keep an eye on that and we'll incorporate them into our conversation as much as possible. To highlight or amplify my technical difficulty of keeping myself on mute, we've run into a couple of issues with video for two of our panelists, so PJ Rivera and Crystal Moscoso are going to be audio only, but please know that we have all 4 panelists with us and we'll direct questions to all of them. They are excited to be here, and Laja, I know you are getting ready to introduce them.
Yeah, so for the attendees, before we dive into the questions, I really want to just take a brief moment to introduce everyone. So PJ Rivera joins us from Marriott, where he actually leads the strategic planning, business transformation, field performance, revenue management, operations support, communication, and employee recognition and events division across North America, so US, Canada, Caribbean, and Latin America. And prior to Marriott, PJ actually worked as a senior manager for Deloitte. So welcome, PJ. Next up, we have Claudia Expuller. I hope I said that properly. She's the general manager of at the Hilton Washington National Mall at our LaFont Plaza location and the Hilton Dulles Airport. So after leading a lot of successful hotel operations teams managed by Highgate and Crescent, she's also built a career developing personal and original programming at all these hotels. So welcome, Claudia.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you guys. We have Mark from the famous Omni Shoreham Hotel. He's our GM and leads the team there in the northwest part of Washington, D.C. And Mark's past experience includes immense years of experience in the US and UK, including the Doyle Collection. So welcome, Mark. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
And last but not the least, our HR specialist, Crystal Moscoso, a complex director of HR in the DC area for Highgate. And her previous experience includes being part of the opening team for the Gaylord. And she's a proud mom of 2 active boys. Oh, wow. Tristan and Liam, lots of energy there. So welcome and thank you very, very much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
So, yeah. now that, we know a little bit about the panelists, we want to get right into the conversation. And as we head into the second half of 2020, we know Q2 has definitely been unique for us, right? Our favorite word of 2020 is going to be unprecedented. And really, it has been an unprecedented time and an unprecedented start to the year and the decade. So we're going to talk about resiliency, change in our business operations in the hospitality world. So I'm actually going to start with PJ today. And what I want to, dig into is, PJ, what kind of big changes have you taken an organization through in the past, and how do you think COVID is different?
Thank you so much, Ladja. So I think, as you said, COVID is unprecedented. Between the political landscape, the social climate, and COVID-19 kind of hitting us all at the same time, it's particularly hard for our industry when you step back and think about it, because at the end of the day, hospitality and travel is all about welcoming the traveler and making them feel safe and making them feel comfortable wherever they're at in their journey. And when you're in this mode where you cannot really anticipate what is going to happen from a legal perspective, when you can't anticipate what is going to happen from a protecting your staff perspective, when you can't anticipate from your guests what they might need, it kind of throws it all up in a blender and mixes it up together and mixes up some of those changes in a much more compounded way than we've ever seen. And I think fundamental to leading change in this environment really comes down to 3 principles. One is, I think all of us, in whatever role you're in, you have to really focus on, where do I add value? Where can I take practical action? Because it's easy to get overwhelmed by all the change, the complexity, the ambiguity, and really focusing on, again, how do I help my guest and my team feel safe and comfortable is kind of that key first principle that we've got to stay grounded in and day out. I think the second, and I have 3 principles overall. The second principle that we really keep our teams focused on in this environment above all else is really emotional steadiness. COVID-19 impacts all of us, both as individuals, as leaders, again, as providers and deliverers of service to our guests and to those who support us and work with us and that we want to take care of. But being an emotionally steady person for them, and especially your teams, is more important now than ever before. And really the third principle about managing and leading change, and these are kind of 3 universal truths that go into any big or small change, is really lean on friends and lean on your advisors and partners. When you're in an environment where there is so much ambiguity and complexity, when you have and really strip away what are all the challenges you're trying to solve into what are the simple questions I still need to answer, and when you can share that with people that you trust and bring it to your business advisors or your personal advisors or your partners in crime, that makes a big difference and it helps put things in perspective. And I think one example of this is from a sales perspective, and as we think about how we sell new room nights or help bring customers back into our hotels, at the end of the day, we might not be able to do site visits like we did yesterday, but keeping in mind that our customers still want to know what our hotels are doing, what can they expect from an event or a transient stay perspective, and ultimately helping them get comfortable with what to expect and walking them through that journey virtually. It's still the same selling process, it's just done in a different way. But when you strip away the emotion, you strip away the complexity, you get to that core sense of, I need to help a customer plan a trip or plan an event, and go back to answering those principles and staying steady throughout that process. That makes all the difference as we take care of our guests and as we take care of our employees and associates during this time.
Wow, that totally makes sense. And that's one thing that was coming to my mind as well while you were going through your third nuance, right? Like in your third principle about managing the change. And I'll actually direct this question to Claudia for this one, and everyone else actually after that too, is how are you managing this change right now in your 2 hotels, in your organization? What's going through your mind right now?
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely very challenging because one hotel is open, the other one is closed, right? So it's 2 different spectrums. I learned, and I mentioned this to somebody the other day, when this all went down, I was scared, I was then mad, and now you just sort of, it settled in and it became a routine. And I think it's about honesty and being transparent, like in both hotels, right? If with the hotel that is closed, with my team members, they want to know when they can come back to work and when is that happening. And then at the open hotel, it's really about, it's ever changing. I mean, you just don't know. It's an airport property, and we can pick up 20% occupancy just like that. So it's really about transparency, really almost to a point where you manage in the day, for the day, and then really, you know, being open to the schedules that the people have, because, you know, we have mothers that work for us. They have to educate their children at home. So really, from that perspective, you know, it's just, I learned to be sort of almost sometimes do manage with my emotion, but in a positive way. And I think they appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, it's what PJ said earlier on in terms of belief, it's also staying healthy yourself. I think that's one of the biggest things that I think that it's taught us. We're, as hoteliers, we have a habit of being here at the crack of dawn and doing what we need to do as hoteliers. But in this instance, to keep your mind clear, it's staying fit. It's getting out and about and working it off. There's frustrations or whatever, because we've all been through a roller coaster. We're still on it. So it's to stay focused, it's to stay healthy.
And just to build off of what Claudia said, I think transparency is a really critical element of managing through change, because a lot of our associates, to Claudia's point, you want to understand how to deal with situations they never would have imagined 3 months ago, and or what is the status of their job and their livelihood. And I think, to me, what's really important as we think about our employees and associates is help them understand the what and the why, even if you don't fully understand what the what is. And you might say, hey, we don't know when we're opening, but this is why. Current forecast data is unpredictable. We don't know what trends are. But the more you can communicate in a context with whatever rationale you have during this environment is more important now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And they appreciate that too. I mean, we've all had those conversations, and it's a case of they know, but they want to hear it from us as leaders to say, we don't know at this moment in time. So, but this is, to PJ's point and to Claudia's point, this is what we know at this point in time, and we're going to give you as much as we can. We'll stay in communication, but it's being honest and open with them.
Yeah, and back to your point, Mark, too, you know, staying healthy with the team. I signed all my team member here in DCE up for the women's. It's a Wonder Woman run, and we're all exercising like crazy and staying healthy and fit, you know. So, but it's important because I think there's such a personal aspect in our leadership right now. I think more than ever before that it's so important.
Yeah, no, wellness is definitely an important element. We are seeing that in our organizations too, and totally agree with Mark. How you feel definitely portrays, and you exhibit that, right? From an HR perspective, Crystal, I was wondering, how are you communicating that message of change, of making sure that wellness is in our forefront while they're going through it?
Absolutely. So as Laja, as you've already said, this is unprecedented, and while it is challenging and difficult, and really, to Claudia's point, you have moments and it's really, I believe the team has come together because all of us are doing more with so much less, and it's really checking up on each other. Like, Mark, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Claudia, are you really fine? Like, let's, you know, it's because right now we are spending so much more time with each other than with our families, and the associates, especially the hourly associates that are working, I do believe that they see that and that they have a so much higher level of respect for us. Obviously, not that they didn't before, but now it's like they genuinely know and feel and see that we all genuinely care about them and their well-being. And, you know, with managing this at home too, the last couple of weeks of the school year, you know, parents having to work and then also be the teachers at home. And personally speaking, it was difficult. I have a 5-year-old, and it wasn't anything easy to get him in front of a screen for 20 minutes a day, right? But even those, you had to do it, and it was just finding a way to go through it.
I think one of the things that's been interesting for me, just hearing you guys all talk, you know, I've been out of the hotel, directly in the hotel space for a little while now, and it's, you know, we think about all of the cleaning protocols that have come out, and I'm like, all along we've been doing this, but now we have to advertise it. And it's the same in terms of our own and our associates' well-being. It's like all along we've done that, but now we need to make sure that it's at the forefront. Our guests are interested in that culture of care, and it's, you know, something that is different, a different way of thinking, I think, for all of us, and, you know, really leads us to wondering more and more, you know, what are the specific nuances and trends we should be considering? PJ or Mark, I don't know if you have any thoughts around that from an industry standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at travel trends, the number one trend at the moment is safety. That is number one across all customer focus groups. You know, at the outset of this crisis in February, when we're all standing there going, okay, something's happening, we're not sure, let's start to put some plans in place. And then when it blew open in March, we started seeing mass cancellations because of the lack of knowledge, and everyone's terrified, to Claudia's point, at the outset of this. Coming through that the last few months, it's a case of shock, disbelief, deciding to close hotels, and then riding through the initial part of the storm. And then it's all been about since then, okay, where are we? How do we now get to a point of us reopening operations and reopening hotels? And what do we require in order to do that? And that's been clarity with CDC, and now with DC, with the phased reopening plan, of which we're in phase 2, and we'll see what happens with phase 3 and beyond. But each company, each hotel then figuring out, okay, what are the protocols we need to do? And that's been a big part of a big body of work with all of us in the industry, with the AHLA, et cetera, in conjunction with CDC, going, how can we do this? And in Omni's case, it's Omni Safe and Clean, and it's soup to nuts. It's from the front door to departure on arrival. But not just that, it's also educating the guest in advance about what we're doing as a hotel, as a company, as an industry, to give them confidence that their stay will be a safe one. And that's the biggest part. And then when they arrive, that we actually do what we say, and it's clear, it's unambiguous, and that as an industry is what is absolutely crucial that we all need to make sure we do.
Yeah, and I have some, I look at it from two perspectives, both building on what Mark said. There's some consumer trends that we definitely need to consider, and then there's some very interesting longer range business trends. So I think from a consumer trends perspective, over the past maybe 3 months, we've taken the opportunity to meet with probably roughly about 90 customers across the US and Canada to hear what's top of mind for them. And a lot of them echo what Mark said. They want to know kind of what is a hotel going to do? How will they deliver on that? And if there's an issue, how will they handle it? When you break that down a little bit more, some of the things that hotel guests are looking for is they want to have visible signs of cleanliness from a smell perspective, from a certification perspective. And also where we're seeing really interesting trends is drive markets are becoming much more important. So local destinations, you see a lot more regional travel. And then in addition to all of that, hotels are also very interested in what are hotels doing to encourage broader customer behavior, because customers trust hotels and hotel associates to deliver on the right experience. Now we're starting to get more nervous where other customers don't necessarily adhere to that. So how are hotels promoting the right kind of behavior within the customer population to ensure that there's safety within that community within a hotel? Now, from a macro business trend perspective, what I think is very interesting is as we start to think 6 months, 2 years, 4 years from now, I think what we're starting to realize is, one, there's going to be an increased demand for more kind of shared home properties. So you see demand for Airbnb, Marriott Homes and Villas. That's starting to grow at an interesting rate because people can contain and control those environments more. So you're seeing some interesting demand for those properties. The other thing that you're going to also see that's going to be much more important to all hotel brands and all chains is going to be loyalty members. And how do you make sure loyalty members feel especially safe? And how do you find ways to create a more touchless travel through partnerships with airlines and hotels? And what does that look like? Because those loyalty members are often the first ones to travel. And if they really trust a brand, it means a lot more. So brand loyalty and kind of really taking care of those elite members, whether they belong to Hyatt or Marriott or Hilton or a plethora of brands, becomes way more important in the future, because you're going to see less travel happening in the interim state. And you're also going to see a greater focus on leisure travel over B2B travel in terms of some of the business trends.
Yeah, and just to,
go ahead, Claudia.
Yeah, just to piggyback on it, it's what PJ said. It's definitely a balance in an opening hotel, because, you know, as we're coming up in our occupancy, managing that Honors or Hilton member expected, they still want their breakfast and, you know, the cleanliness, what Mark was saying, and even on our SALT scores, you know, people pay attention on our guest service scores, whether, you know, there's specific question to COVID, is the staff wearing masks, you know, do you feel safe, is it clean? And it's definitely a balance of all that to try to manage through it with minimal staff, right? So that's been interesting.
I think that actually goes really well to our next question. You know, we've talked a lot just naturally and organically about the adaptability we've all had to have. You know, we're hoteliers, so we've always sort of figured it out as we went, but this has been really, you know, like unprecedented to me as becoming the inauguration of my vocabulary. Like, I hate saying the word because you just get tired of talking about it. But the thing that is, I think, top of mind, and certainly one of the things that we wanted to talk about with each of you, and maybe Claudia, we can jump back to you, is, you know, thinking about resiliency and what that means to you, what that means to your teams, what does it mean to your ownership, right? Like, our key stakeholders are not just our associates and our guests in the building at the time, but we have a lot of other meaningful input that we have to also manage, and we manage expectations, right? Mm-hmm. So what are you thinking in terms of a resilient culture when you come back, you know, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days out from reopening at National Mall?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's definitely, you know, it's ever changing. That's what I'm finding, right? It's ever changing. What goes today may be different tomorrow, and really, you know, looking for the players that can be flexible and are willing to do anything we have to do. It's about the culture, again, of transparency. I can't say that enough, and honesty, and working with the people that have single moms that are at home, and open that culture up that they can manage and still make their hours. And really, you know, just, it's a team. I think Crystal mentioned it before, people, you grow more as a team in these difficult times. And I think just setting clear expectations, to answer your question for the ownership, it's all about the bottom line, right? I mean, I think we all can say that everybody is losing money left and right. So how do you utilize the space that you have and, you know, manage through that, and the challenge from a sales perspective with the meeting planners, and what works, what doesn't work, and it's a complete new, you know, us life as we knew it before March 6th or March 12th, whenever everything happened, is out the door. And how do you learn that, lead your team to it, and then communicate that to your ownership has been rather interesting.
Yeah, and I think often when I think about resiliency, I think about bamboo. Bamboo is actually one of the hardest woods or trees to break or saw. And I think similar to bamboo, you want individuals in a culture that can flex with people, building what Claudia said, that can really operate in a framework. And really, to me, the sign of a really resilient culture and really resilient people are people that start with inquiry versus advocacy. So they seek to really understand, and they ask questions to try to get around something and understand it, versus immediately trying to attack it or share what is current state or what was done. And I think the more we can push our teams and build cultures around inquiry and ask our people to really flex in the way bamboo does, I think it's going to be really tantamount for the future.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, this isn't going to be over tomorrow. So, you know, going back to, you know, to recover quickly, which is the meaning of resilient, it's what part of that recovery. So, you know, it all depends on when a vaccine comes in. So, you know, we're in a very different scenario here than heretofore. So it's a case of how do we maintain that team focus for the long haul? Because, you know, for 6, 8, 12 months, it's a very, very different outlook.
Right.
And as a result, is to maintain that intensity, to maintain all those standards, all those protocols, that people don't get that faded, tired, jaded feeling to it, whilst at the same time looking, particularly at this hotel as a convention hotel, looking at the longer term bookings, getting that on the books for further down the track. That's a challenge, but again, it goes back to focus and being straight up with the team in terms of where we are and building in that fitness, as it were, the mental fitness for the team to get through this for the long haul.
Yeah, I agree. And Crystal, I know, you know, I've had the honor of working with you before, and you've always encouraged a really very open door policy for not only you and your team in the HR realm, but also all leaders of a hotel. But I think with, you know, really shorter hours in the day, even though we're all working long hours, there's fewer people to do more work. It becomes harder and harder to do that. So what do you recommend, or what would you suggest to keep that at the forefront or top of mind for hoteliers?
So, Jen, I would say that right now, with trying to manage the day-to-day, and right now, most of the team, especially the executives that are permitted to work from home, and that is a new completely, it's a different concept for hospitality right now. We are looking to slowly transition those back to perhaps a 2-a-day work week on site, and then the rest at home. And it's really just I'm big about checking in on each other. And you know, one of the big changes for us from an HR perspective is walk-ins will be discouraged. We're going to encourage associates to make appointments with HR, and that's not something that I'm, to your point, that's not who I am. But again, it's what we have to manage and how we have to change. So I think we're all going through our own challenging and with our hearts, what's the right word? With our hearts with two faces, that, you know, I want to do what's best. I want to be able to hug my associates back and welcome them back when they come through those doors. But then it's, you know, I need to have my mask and my eye protection and all of the PPE. Like, it's just a lot to go through right now. I hope that helps.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I think it's, you know, one of those things where, you know, we are family in the hospitality industry. We've all experienced that. We spend more time with our hotel associates. And, you know, our next question really was in that same vein, like, how do you keep your staff engaged and motivated and feeling safe when they come back to work? Because it is going to be different. There's high stress, and, you know, I don't want to get into politics here, but I think we would be remiss not to mention that, you know, the majority of our audience and the hoteliers that we're speaking with today are all based in BC. And so there's, you know, an added level of cultural change that's happening that impacts our associates as well. And so, you know, cognitively, there's a lot going on. And so, you know, when people are coming back to work, you know, definitely, I think starting with Crystal, I'd love to, you know, hear, you know, 1 or 2 things that you think are important. You know, do you try to take their minds off it to keep them engaged or motivated, or do you just allow them space to talk about what they want to talk about and maybe have a little more freedom in that regard?
So looking back and what resiliency means, I think of like one of our restaurant servers that's been through multiple leadership changes, even management changes, and that they've stuck through it because they love and they're passionate about what they do. Those are the associates that are calling and texting, you know, when can I come back? Do you have an update for me? Like, those are the ones that really want to get back to doing what they love and taking care of their guests, because that's how they address them, not our guests, it's their guests. Now, from an HR perspective, of course, there's going to be reorientation for everyone that before they walk in the door. SOPs and and understanding that, you know, the mask is now a part of the uniform and we will be providing that for them, and, you know, hand sanitizer in pocket. It's a lot of the things that we also want to make sure that they feel good and safe about when they're walking through the door. And then putting on some responsibility on them. For example, if we give them a reusable mask, we're not going to wash it and care for it for them. They are responsible for, you know, taking care of it, washing it on their own, and, you know, putting back some of that small ownership on them.
Which hopefully makes them a better world citizen too. You know, it gets them into the habit of doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was actually also curious because Crystal, you made an interesting point, and Mark, you've been stressing about wellness so much, and, you know, mental health, and also just in general ensuring that our guests and staff feels very safe and, you know, have that wellness aspect. What are you specifically doing with your staff and guests specifically around these topics of safety and wellness?
Yeah, I mean, well, at the moment, it's because we're closed. It's all in the planning in terms of as and when we reopen. But in the meantime, it's also communicating to the team. You know, doing Zoom. I'm zoomed out. I think we're all zoomed out. None of us did a whole lot of video conferencing before this, and we live on video conferences like we're here now.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's a case of making sure that people are aware in as much as we can to know what's going on. So from the mental perspective, okay, I'm not coming to work yet, but hopefully down the track, we're going to get on board again. From a guest perspective, going back to my earlier point, when people are coming in, it's that they know that we're doing everything we can. So from an associate perspective, it's health screening. It is providing the PPE. It's making sure that, as Crystal said, that they are fully trained on every protocol and SOP that's been designed by brand to ensure the guest experience through all touch points from arrival to departure are managed and consistently so, and then having the audit trail in place to ensure that it's consistently delivered. From a guest perspective, that's communicated to them in advance and also on arrival. To PJ's point, it's the smell, it's the touch, it's the scent, it's the visibility of the team, making sure that they are out and about doing exactly what we have said that we as a company are doing, so that we are cleaning all the buttons, all the railings, all the whatever we need from the desk to the front doors to the elevators to all those touch points. And from a guest, when they walk into the room is clean. It's not only clean, but it's spotless. That, you know, from our perspective, the remote control and the door hangers are in a bag sealed with a clean and safe sticker on the front. So it's been disinfected before it goes into that bag. But it's all those things reinforce the message that it is safe and it is clean and your stay is going to be a great one in as much as we can. But the key part is that we all do that as an industry, and everyone is, albeit slightly different in every brand, but we're all at the same point in terms of making sure that we are protecting our associates and that we're protecting our guests. But to Claudia's point or Crystal's point, I mean, I have associates here, you know, we've hundreds of associates who are currently, you know, at home. One of my associates is 54 years service. You know, that's a lot longer than I'm alive. But it's amazing that they want, you know, everyone wants to come back. They're calling into HR on a frequent basis, asking, how are things? What can we do? Anything we can help with? So, you know, there's a lot of passion there, and there's a lot of energy, and people will, you know, coming back. It just shows you, you know, the resiliency built into the team over the years. And DC has seen more than its fair share of stuff over the decades, which has helped in that regard.
Yeah, I think those are really good points, and I think, you know, I hope everyone else on the call, I certainly did. Like literally when you were talking about your associate with 54 years of service, like it literally like hit me, right?
Yeah.
Like, 'cause we all know, we all have those stories. We all remember working with those brilliant people, and they are the ones who breathe life into every day that we do what we do. You know, I think it's an interesting question about resiliency, and you guys are all on the call because you're amazing at your job. I think that we're very blessed in the DC region to have, you know, really excellent hoteliers. But I think along the way we make missteps. And is there anything that any of you have run into over the past 90 or 120 days that you would say maybe on second thought you wouldn't have done, or you know, got feedback that it maybe wasn't the right decision, whether that's, you know, from an associate or maybe from an owner or someone on your corporate management team?
I'll say that
a little vulnerability.
that when this first started for DC, I remember it must have been late January, maybe even mid-February, that we started to get questions from our hourly associates. Can I wear a mask or can I wear gloves? And that was a conversation topic within the EC team, like, because we, you know, the CDC guidelines weren't out for masks yet, nothing was out yet. And it was, do we want to give the guests the impression that we're not clean, or that, you know, what impression will that have for the guest to see us with, you know, an agent with a mask? And the logic quickly, it's fascinating to me how we were so half back then, and now it's just a part of the uniform, and not only uniform, but just a part of life right now. So that's something that obviously we didn't know, but I was one that said, you know, we need to do what the associate feels comfortable with. And if they were asking them to come in and clean a room and have guest interaction, then let's get them a mask. You know, it's not going to be hospital grade, but if they want a mask, let's provide it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Claudia. I know you were about
Yeah,
to say
I'm
something.
thinking, I mean, you know, it's tough to say, right? I mean, looking back, what would I have done differently is maybe, you know, we laid off a lot of people, you know, in mid-March, and then, you know, you thought you could save another round of people, because, I mean, we all, truthfully, March 18th was the worst day in my career when I had to lay off all these people. And then, you know, a week later, I had to lay off another round of people, and it was just horrible. You know, and I think just if I had the magic wand, and it's maybe not the right word to say, but, you know, that I could just have said, okay, this is the people that are leaving us right now. And, you know, it was really interesting to see the team that is on property, how hard they're working, because they know, my director of sales always says this, we are responsible for the people to come back. And to see that just blows me away, and is super amazing. And, you know, and you know, back to an open hotel, you know, little things like, I have a couple ladies working on the front desk, and they're like 5'4", and they were wearing these big gloves. And I finally said, you know what, let me go get you small gloves. And they were so excited that we finally bought them small gloves. I mean, that to me just blew me away. That is these little things, but it does go back to safety. And, you know, Mark, you mentioned that earlier, you know, we used to clean everything overnight. Well, now we clean the lobby in the middle of the day with the sanitizer and everything. And it just, everything has shifted, you know, and so it's really a little thing that we make our staff happy, and it's so important to really dial into them.
Yeah, and I think to your question, Jennifer, you know, it's very hard to, hindsight's 2020, and particularly the roller coaster that we were on, in terms of from the outset. I remember we had a big conference towards the end of February, and we'd managed to get in hand sanitizer stations around the lobby. The square footage of this place is so big that it's like, okay, we need 20 of them. Okay, well, who can give us 20 of them? And trying to get that equipment on property was a challenge, because everyone's racing for the same thing, hospitals in particular. So it was getting that in and then up and running. But, you know, there's an awful lot coming out of this, how we, as an industry, I mean, worldwide, you know, in terms of how pandemics were, oh, well, that happened 100 years ago, and, well, there was the bird flu thing, and that really didn't happen, so it's not an issue. Everyone is totally different now, and that going forward is going to be how our industry will never be the same again, and it's how we evolve in our operations. I mean, we have evolved now, so it's what then that looks like going forward is going to be it's fascinating to see where that goes.
And I think Mark and Claudia have done an incredible job looking at this from a property view. And when I think about it from an industry view, I think as an industry for a long time, we've prided ourselves on certain core metrics for success that we fundamentally need to shift now, and probably take this opportunity as we think about the future of our industry. I think a huge element of that really is everyone always, up until now, always talked about RevPAR and RevPAR and RevPAR and occupancy. And I think we're in a mode where you're not going to see significant increases in RevPAR occupancy for quite some time, and it's going to be a very slow creep up as we go through the next 3 years of recovery. And I think we're now as an industry need to step back and think about what is most important. What are other metrics? How do you look at net operating profit? How do you look at overall spend per customer? How do we start to evolve our operating models and the way we try to deliver and sell services in a very different way in the future? And I think that'll be really tantamount of like how we think about it coming out of recovery. And I think the other element of a lot of this is also how do we partner differently, and what does that look like? Because I think every time we've talked to a lot of our owners, a lot of the time we talk to our B2B customers, and as we've talked to also kind of loyalty and leisure customers, there is an expectation almost now of saying, how come more hotels are not partnering with airlines and aren't partnering with TSA to create a completely touchless experience in the future? What else are you all doing for us, and how are you going to come together as an industry? And I think what went from being kind of more competitive and more like how do we compete, it's going to be much more about how do we come together as an industry and as a travel ecosystem to support our guests in the future. And I think we've been relatively slow in doing that at the first part of recovery. And I think we're now getting to a point where we now realize that, and we're diving headfirst into how we look and make this work differently in the future. And I think that's an exciting part for the industry.
Yeah. PJ, I think you're already reading my mind, because the next thing that I was going to ask was around working together in DC, and mainly to understand how can here, our DC hotels work together to get our destination back up on the feet, because we've gone through so much, right, in the last 30 to 45 days, also with the protests and riots from a visual beautification perspective, also COVID aspect as well. So there are so many different things that we need to now think about to make sure that we have to really come together and work together to get back our destination, our city back on its feet. So what are your thoughts?
I think so. Actually, one of my biggest thoughts is coming from some recent news and headlines. So even when our associates, employees, agents are in our respective hotels and working day in and day out, and they have masks and protective coverings and they're practicing socially distancing, more often than not, when they leave the hotel setting or they leave delivery experience, they might not always be consistently practicing those same behaviors. And I think the more we can build a community and support that behavior, because the only way we're going to continue to drive up travel is if we can maintain associate exposure and prevalence around COVID-19. And the only way we can do that is by recognizing that a lot of our associates and employees even if they don't work together day in and day out, they're friends outside of work, they all connect, they're part of the same communities. And the more we can raise that conversation around that responsibility around public health behavior in and outside of the work setting, and the more we can do that together, I think that's going to be really important from a DC perspective. Because as soon as there's words that there's huge outbreaks in a brand or a hotel in DC among staff, that's going to hurt all of us. So I think we all have a shared responsibility there. And to me, that's one of the biggest things we can do to really kind of connect and support this community as DC.
Yeah.
And if I may, I'll take my hat off as the Omnishoreman and as a Destination DC board. That's going to be the vehicle by which we do it. That the members of Destination DC need to band together, work together. Not only just obviously the phased reopening of DC is for conventions is posing challenges, which we're working our way through in terms of post phase 3 before a vaccine. But on the convention side, it is collaborating with other hotels. It is working with Destination DC and Events DC on the site inspection process. Get them involved with the Housing Bureau and with the team at DDC in terms of, if you have an inquiry, how can they help you get it over the line? You know, from a marketing perspective, the same thing. To PJ's point earlier, drive market is where we're at for the next while. So it's how do we as a city, you know, the Smithsonian is not open yet. So but there's plenty to do in the city, even with that, you know, but there's still personal small tours of the city that can be bespoke, can be tailored. That's an important piece that allows everyone to go, okay, there is, and the more of us who do it and talk about it, the more that gets out there. So again, being open to editorials, being open to hosting people at the hotel, at your hotel, you know, you're going to have the beds, the occupancy availability. So you might as well host some people to expand on the market and help where we're going. But, you know, it's, you know, if you're doing a site inspection, can you get someone in to help with it on a virtual perspective? You know, do you need a drone? Is there someone that can help you with a drone? Or do you know, does your Wi-Fi work across all areas of the hotel to make sure you have a seamless, you know, virtual site inspection, live site inspection on an iPad? All those simple things that one needs to think through, because, you know, that's the reality with a lot of people, that they're not potentially going to travel, but they still need to make decisions on future year business and groups that they've relocated from this year into future years. How does that look like? How does that work? And not just creating the story of your hotel, but also that of the city. So that it's a, you know, what does Reagan do? What is Dulles doing? What is, you know, Union Station doing? And the whole experience of the client coming into Washington.
Yeah, and it's definitely also, it's, you know, the guest experience. We got to make sure as leaders across the hotel industry and really the restaurant industry, because look what's happening in Texas and in Los Angeles or in California, that we as leaders really practicing that social distancing and that we implement that on our bars and the cleanliness in our hotels. Because to your point, Mark, one bad comment on social media and we're done, right? I mean, so yeah.
Yeah, no, that's actually very true. We always, like, where we've been brainstorming with our partners and all the hotels as well, right? And really good point, Mark, about even Destination DC members coming together and talking about it. So I think the more visibility and the more we promote that together as a community and talk about it together as us and not your hotel or my hotel, that will definitely together elevate the presence and the equity of the city. So I totally agree with that. I know we're coming closely to the end, but we wanted to hear from all of you and get into your minds and actually even get some tricks and tips from each one of you to help our audience bounce back fast. So anything that, you know, one thing that you say is absolutely essential, any one tip that you would like to share with our audience today to bounce back, what would you say?
You can start with Crystal or PJ.
I'll say that for those that are on the call right now, some of you may be even on furlough. And I want to tell you that I myself have been on furlough, and I can speak from experience that it is challenging and it is hard, and know that we are going to get through this together. And the one silver lining to all this for you, and it should be for all of us that are in the situation, that is that we get a chance to spend time with our loved ones that in this industry we work ridiculous hours, and you know that we are able to spend that time with them that otherwise we wouldn't have.
I think that's a great point. I think to build off of it, I think, sorry, I'm going to break the rule. Probably it's not one, but I think it's two. For me, it's always focus on adding value. You can't control the environment. You can't control everything that's going on around you, but you can always focus on what's the one thing I can do to add value, whether it's if you're on furlough and learning a new skill, or whether you're in this environment of chaos and you know that there's an issue or something that's less clear that you can help clarify, seize that. And I think the second element, building on Crystal's point, is stay connected with everyone you can, whether you're on furlough or reduced work week. The more you can talk to your colleagues, ask questions, we're all in this together. And I think there's a lot of strength in that community. And I think sometimes it's easy to isolate yourself in this environment. And I think this is this is a clear point in time where you definitely don't want to isolate. So staying connected and focusing on value is going to be really key.
Thank you.
I suppose mine would be fit, be focused, and embrace change.
Transparency, 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 and be a change agent. You know, as a leader, how can I bring more people in and maybe cut the shifts and give more work to people rather than an 8-hour shift? But it's what we're living by right now. So yeah, and there is an end to all of it.
I think so too, and I think, you know, I asked you to share what might be qualified by some as a failure, right? And share that vulnerability. And Crystal, I really appreciate you sharing your story of being on furlough, and PJ, your encouragement to stay connected, and Mark, your encouragement to stay connected. That's all being part of, you know, sort of fit and well and keeping your mental wellness. And, you know, I think it's human nature to be ashamed to be laid off or furloughed, but, you know, the number one thing across all of this is not anyone's fault or a personal reflection of anyone's performance. And that isn't, you know, I'm not just saying that to Crystal, I'm saying that to anyone. And we all know that, but I think, you know, as things do become more routine, we forget that. And we're, you know, going to be fighting in a really tough job pool when things do start to open back up, and, you know, salaries might be reduced and we might be willing to accept less than what we're worth. And, you know, it's a tough place to be as an industry, and I think as humans. So thank you all for sharing that. I, PJ, love breaking the rules myself. I have given sort of a hint to one of the lightning round questions that I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to ask a second one. But one rule you shouldn't break is social distancing and wearing a face covering or a mask, however you'd like to refer to them. And so just because it is something that we're all literally, quite literally faced with, I wanted to ask you guys to share your masks with us. Do you guys have any fun ones you wear around the hotel, or do you just do utilitarian? Let's see them. Okay, so Mark, matches everything all the time, never have to be out of. So I brought a fun one to share with you guys. This is, it's a, if you can read my whiskers, if you can read my whiskers, you're too close. So it's a nice reminder, if you can read my whiskers, you're too close. And it supports Crumbs and Whiskers, which is a cat cafe in DC. They're trying to stay alive. Which leads me to my second question, and we can start to go with PJ and Crystal on this one. You know, a lot of things are closed and they're just starting to reopen. What's the number one thing in the DC metro area you're looking forward to reopening, from whether it's restaurant or entertainment or a museum? PJ or Crystal?
My personal favorite has been going to a restaurant, believe it or not, by myself, no husband, no kids, and just enjoying a glass of wine and just people watching. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, for me, it's just the DC food scene. I love all the restaurants in the city. I think we've come so far in the past maybe decade or so, and it's sad to see some restaurants close, and I'm hoping a lot of them reopen. But I love our food scene. I love going out with friends and family and loved ones. So I'm looking forward to us getting hopefully some normalcy there eventually.
Claudia or Mark?
From a business perspective, the museum, having the Spy Museum open again, you know, we're right next door to them, and we've been staying in touch, and the Bible Museum is open. So I think that's what's going to bring some people back into the market to have the museums open. So that's what I'm excited about. And they're great partners for us too, so.
Yeah, I think to echo Claudia, from a business perspective, it's a Smithsonian institution that it all opens up. I think that will, from a leisure dynamic, will make a huge impact. From the zoo, which is only up the street from us, but all the other ones in the National Mall, that would make a huge difference. But on a personal level, yeah, it's the connectivity, it's the social side of things on the food scene, the restaurants and the bars. But yeah, we're going to be there soon, hopefully, but we'll see.
Good. Yeah, I totally understand that. I actually recently moved out by the area and I miss the restaurant terribly. What I'm looking forward to being open when I come back to visit is DC Improv. You know, it's sort of a staple in the community, and I think it's really important for things like that, you know, to come back and bring comedy and laughter into our lives. We all need a little bit of that. Laja, I hope you'll answer the question and then wrap it up before we turn it over to Sheila. Thank you, everyone, for participating today.
Yeah. So for me also, Mark, it's the zoo and we're members. And my son asks me every weekend, because when we moved here from Chicago a few years ago, that was our go-to place every weekend, and see the pandas and feed them and hang out with them. So I've been on their website. I look at the live cam. So I'm totally with you with the zoo opening. It'll really help us. So yeah. But thank you very much, everyone. It's really been a pleasure to hear from you and taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you
Sheila,
so
why
very
don't you
much.
tell us what's happening, what happened yesterday?
Ooh, so are you talking about my MGM story? So MGM actually opened. We did a soft opening starting on this past Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We opened to the public yesterday at 6 a.m. We did open MGM with masks required, and we had no fussing customers from that regard. So we did extremely well over the weekend. We opened the hotel with 50%. We did fill. And they were with our casino guests. Transient reservations can start at midweek, and we're still protecting the weekends for the next month or so. Yeah, exactly. So we are very much back from our 3,700 employees. We brought back a little less than half, and then as business trends pick up, we will add more as we go along. So it's been a big couple of days for us, and we are watching the rest of the company and supporting all that's happening right now. Most of our properties in Las Vegas are open. There's another one that'll be opening up later this week. And so overall, it's been a very busy 3 months. I was not furloughed. I was working from home for 3 weeks. I'm sorry, 3 months. And then I had my director of catering conference services, and we just called it that great lift and shift, moving all of our 2020 business up to 2021. And customers were really, really welcoming to that idea. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and close now. So thank you so very much, Laja and Jennifer, and to our panelists, Mark, Claudia, PJ, and Crystal. Thanks so very much for taking the time to share your thoughts and insights as we move through the next phase of this pandemic. And for all of us that joined us, we hope you gained some helpful takeaways on managing change and staying resilient. Remember, you will receive a link to today's recording. And please also take advantage of our certifications. Nearly 30 years ago, HSMAI introduced certification for hotel sales professionals. Today, training and credentialing is offered in several disciplines, including revenue management, business acumen, and digital marketing. You can find more information at hsmai.org/certification. Also, mark your calendars for Wednesday, July 8th at 12 noon for our next webinar titled Returning to Work in a Post-Pandemic Environment. Keep an eye out for upcoming e-blasts or posts on LinkedIn and Facebook for more information. And lastly, on behalf of Ellen Wilson, Managing Director, and our entire advisory board, we wish you a wonderful rest of your day and a happy and safe Independence weekend. This now ends our webinar.